Rain hammered the streets of New York like it wanted to drown the entire city. Elena Voss moved through the chaos with nothing but a white cane and the weight of her cello case. Every step was a battle. The storm had turned the sidewalks into rivers, and her cane kept slipping on the flooded pavement. Her coat was soaked through. Her shoes were ruined. She needed shelter, now. Through the roar of the rain and blaring horns, she caught the sound of heavy revolving doors and the faint, expensive scent of oud and polished marble. A hotel, a grand one. She didn't care which one. She pushed forward, desperate to escape the storm. The moment she stepped inside the St. Regis, the world changed. The noise of the city vanished. In its place was a heavy, unnatural silence. The kind of silence that only exists when dangerous men are in the room. Elena paused, water dripping from her hair onto the marble floor. She could feel the shift in the air. Too many people standing still, too many eyes watching. The low murmur of conversation had stopped the second the doors closed behind her. She had no idea she had just walked into the middle of a meeting that could decide who lived and who disappeared in this city tonight. Less than 30 feet away, Damian Vale stood at the center of the grand lobby, like he owned it, because he did. Tall, broad, dressed in a black three-piece suit that looked like it cost more than most people's home apartments. His presence alone made the air feel heavier. He was the most feared Mafia boss on the East Coast, a man whose name was spoken in whispers even by those who had never seen his face. His army of armed men surrounded him in a loose circle, cold, professional, and ready to kill at a single command. Damian had just finished a brutal negotiation upstairs. 3 men from a rival family were already dead. His mood was dangerous. Elena took 2 uncertain steps forward, trying to find her bearings. Her wet heel slipped on the polished marble. The heavy cello case threw off her balance completely. She stumbled hard, arms flying out as she pitched forward. She didn't hit the floor. Instead, she crashed straight into a wall of solid muscle and expensive fabric. The impact knocked the breath out of her. Her cane clattered loudly across the marble, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent lobby. In less than a second, everything changed. The soft click of multiple guns being drawn filled the air. 6, maybe 7 weapons were now pointed directly at her. Damian's men moved with terrifying speed, forming a tight wall around their boss. Their faces were stone. Fingers rested on triggers. One wrong move, and she would be dead before she even understood what happened. Elena froze against the man's chest, heart hammering violently. She could smell gun oil, expensive cologne, and something darker, like fresh blood and rain. No one moved. No one breathed. Damian Vale looked down at the soaked, trembling girl pressed against him. His cold, merciless eyes studied her face. The blind, unfocused hazel eyes, the wet strands of dark hair stuck to her pale skin, and then they stopped on the faint, crescent-shaped scar just beneath her jawline. Something shifted in his expression. His entire body went still. Then, in a voice so low it was almost a growl, he leaned down and whispered something against her ear. Just one sentence. Whatever he said was quiet, private, meant only for her. But the effect was instant. Every single one of his men, hardened killers who had faced death without blinking, froze where they stood. Their guns remained raised, but their bodies locked up. Eyes widened slightly. Some even took an involuntary half-step back. The tension in the lobby became something else entirely. Something electric, something dangerous. No one dared to move. No one dared to speak. The most feared Mafia boss in the city had just whispered something that made his entire army stand completely still, and the blind girl in his arms had no idea that her life had just changed forever. For 3 full seconds, no one moved. Damian Vale's whisper still hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. His men, the same ruthless killers who had executed 3 men upstairs without a second thought, stood completely frozen. Guns remained raised, but their fingers had stopped short of the triggers. A few of them exchanged quick, stunned glances. They had seen their boss order executions, burn empires, and destroy families without blinking. but they had never seen him react like this to anyone, especially not to a blind girl who had accidentally bumped into him. Elena could feel the shift. The air around her had turned ice cold. She didn't know what he had whispered, but she could feel the weight of it. The man whose chest she was still pressed against hadn't let her go. His grip on her arms was firm, almost possessive, but not painful. She could hear his steady breathing right above her head. "Lower your weapons." Damian's voice was low, calm, and terrifyingly final. It wasn't a request. It was an order that left zero room for argument. Still, none of his men moved immediately. One of them, a tall, scarred man standing closest to them, finally spoke, his voice tight with disbelief. "Boss, she just attacked you. We don't even know who she is." Damian's head turned slowly toward the man. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I said, lower your weapons. Now." The temperature in the lobby seemed to drop another 10 degrees. One by one, the guns were holstered. The tension didn't disappear. It simply changed shape. Now, it was fear, mixed with confusion. Every man in that circle was wondering the same thing. Who the hell is this girl? Elena finally found her voice, though it came out shaky. I'm sorry. I couldn't see. I slipped. Please, just let me go." She tried to pull away, but Damian's hands didn't release her. Instead, he did something that shocked his own men even more. He reached down, picked up her fallen white cane, and gently pressed it back into her hand. Then he took her heavy cello case from the floor, like it weighed nothing. "You're not going anywhere," he said quietly, his voice now directed only at her. There was something different in his tone, something almost protective. Elena's heart started racing faster. "Who are you?" Damian didn't answer right away. He simply draped his heavy black overcoat over her soaked shoulders, shielding her from the cold. The fabric still carried his warmth, and that same dark, expensive scent. "My name is Damian Vale," he said, "and you just walked into the middle of something you were never supposed to see." Outside, the storm was still raging. Damian guided her toward the revolving doors without asking for permission. His men followed in complete silence, forming a protective wall around them. The moment they stepped outside, 3 black armored SUVs were already waiting at the curb, engines running. One of his men quickly opened the back door of the middle vehicle. Elena resisted for a moment. "I don't even know you. I'm not getting in a car with—" "You will," Damian said, his voice low but firm. "Because if you go back out there alone tonight, you won't survive till morning." Something in the way he said it made her believe him. She allowed him to help her into the car. The interior was warm, dark, and smelled of leather and gunmetal. Damian sat beside her. The door shut with a heavy thud, cutting off the sound of the storm completely. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Damian leaned back in his seat and looked at her. Really looked at her. Like he was seeing something he had been searching for a long time. "I've been waiting 10 years for this moment," he said quietly. Elena turned her head toward his voice, confused and scared. "What are you talking about?" Damian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached forward and poured a small glass of whiskey from the car's decanter. He placed it gently in her hands. "Drink," he said. "You're shaking." She took a small sip, the burn steadying her nerves slightly. Then he spoke again, his voice darker this time. "Your father, he didn't die in an ordinary car accident, Elena." Her entire body went still. Damian continued, his eyes never leaving her face. "He died because of me, because he worked for me. And now, the same people who killed him have found out you're still alive." Elena's grip tightened around the glass. Damian's next words came out low, almost like a vow. "And I'm not going to let them finish what they started." The whiskey glass trembled in Elena's hands. She couldn't see Damian's face, but she could feel the weight of his stare. The silence inside the armored SUV was suffocating, broken only by the low hum of the engine, and the distant sound of rain hammering against the bulletproof windows. "What do you mean my father worked for you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was an accountant. He worked in a boring office. He was the best financial ghost in the entire underworld." Damian interrupted calmly. "Your father, Thomas Voss, didn't just balance books. He moved hundreds of millions of dollars for my organization without leaving a single trace. He was the reason my enemies couldn't touch my money for years. Elena shook her head, refusing to believe it. You're lying. My father was a quiet man. He came home every night. He helped me with my homework. He also kept the entire East Coast Mafia empires running from the shadows, Damian said, cutting through her denial. His voice wasn't cruel, but it was firm. And 10 years ago, one of my rivals found out who he really was. Elena's breathing grew shallow. She could feel the old wound in her chest, the one she had spent a decade trying to bury, starting to tear open again. Damian leaned forward slightly. His next words came out slower, heavier. The car crash on the bridge that night wasn't an accident, Elena. It was a hit. A rival family sent a driver to run your father off the road. They wanted the ledgers. They wanted to know where my money was hidden. Tears burned behind Elena's blind eyes. She remembered the screeching tires, the shattering glass, her father's hand reaching for hers in the wreckage. His last words were a choked whisper she had never been able to forget. Run. Don't look back. Damian's voice dropped even lower. Your father swerved at the last second. He took the full impact on his side, so you would survive in the passenger seat. The shattered glass took your sight, but it saved your life. A broken sob escaped Elena's throat. She had spent 10 years believing it was just a drunk driver. 10 years hating the world for taking her father and her vision in one night. Now the truth felt like it was crushing her ribs. Why are you telling me this now? She asked, her voice cracking. Why didn't you just let me go? Damian was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, there was something raw in his voice that she hadn't expected from the most feared man in the city. Because for 10 years, I've been watching over you from the shadows. The anonymous scholarship that got you into Juilliard, that was me. The experimental corneal surgeries at Johns Hopkins that your insurance refused to cover, paid in full by one of my shell companies. The apartment you live in, the rent has been covered since you turned 18. Elena's head snapped toward him. You've been paying for everything? I made your father a promise before he died, Damian said. I told him if anything ever happened to him, I would protect you. I would make sure you lived a normal life, far away from this world. And I kept that promise. Until tonight. He exhaled slowly. Tonight, everything changed. The same family that killed your father just found out you're still alive. They think he left something with you. The master ledger. The one that could destroy both empires. They were already on their way to your apartment when you walked into that hotel. Elena felt like the ground was shifting beneath her. So what happens now? She asked quietly. Damian's answer was immediate and absolute. Now you stay with me. My penthouse is the only place in this city where they can't reach you. My men will handle the rest. Elena turned her face toward the window, even though she couldn't see the city lights rushing past. Her entire life had just been rewritten in the back of a mafia boss's car. The man sitting beside her wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was the shadow that had been protecting her for 10 years, and the reason her father was dead. She didn't know whether to thank him or hate him, but one thing was becoming terrifyingly clear. She was no longer just a blind cellist trying to survive New York. She was now the most wanted girl in the criminal underworld, and the most feared mafia boss in the city had just claimed her as his to protect. The armored SUV descended into a private underground garage beneath one of the tallest buildings in Manhattan. Elena could feel the change in air pressure the moment the heavy steel gate closed behind them. With a deep, final clang, they were no longer on the streets. They were inside Damian Vale's world now. When the car door opened, Damian stepped out first and offered her his hand. She hesitated for a second before taking it. His palm was warm and steady. He guided her out of the vehicle like she was made of glass. Welcome to 432 Park Avenue, he said quietly. This is the most secure building in the city. No one gets in or out without my permission. Elena could already feel the difference. The air here was still, climate-controlled, and carried a faint scent of leather, wood, and something expensive she couldn't name. Her cane tapped against smooth marble as Damian led her toward a private elevator. She heard the soft ding, then the quiet whoosh of doors opening. They rode up in silence. Elena counted the seconds in her head. It felt like they were rising forever. When the elevator doors finally opened, the sheer size of the space hit her immediately. The penthouse was massive. She could tell by the way sound traveled, or rather, how it didn't. Everything felt open, expensive, and strangely empty. Her footsteps echoed softly. As Damian guided her inside, she heard the low murmur of several men moving around them. Damian's voice changed when he spoke to his security team. Full lockdown. No one enters or leaves this floor without my direct order. I want eyes on every entrance and every camera. If anyone so much as breathes near this building tonight, I want to know before they do. Yes, boss, came the unified reply. Elena stood still in the middle of the vast living room, gripping her cane tightly. She could feel the heat coming from the floor, heated marble. The air smelled faintly of white tea and something woody. Somewhere in the distance, she heard the soft hum of expensive appliances and the faint sound of rain still hitting the reinforced glass windows far above the city. This wasn't just a safe house. This was a fortress. Damian walked back toward her. She could sense him standing close again. You'll stay here until I deal with the threat, he said. His tone had softened slightly, but there was still steel underneath it. You'll have everything you need. Food, clothes, your cello, whatever you want. Elena turned her head slightly toward his voice. And if I want to leave? There was a short pause. You won't, Damian replied. Not until it's safe. He didn't say it harshly. He said it like a fact, like he had already decided what was best for her. Elena felt a strange mix of emotions, fear, confusion, and something she couldn't quite name. She was standing in the most luxurious prison she could have ever imagined, and the man who built it was the most feared Mafia boss in New York. Damian gently took her coat from her shoulders and handed it to one of his men without looking, away from her. Get some rest tonight, he said. Tomorrow we'll talk more. But know this, Elena. He stepped closer, his voice dropping low enough that only she could hear. You're under my protection now, and I don't lose the things I protect. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the middle of his golden cage as the sound of his footsteps faded down the long hallway. The first night in Damian Vale's penthouse felt like a dream wrapped in barbed wire. Elena sat on the edge of an enormous bed in one of the guest rooms, her fingers tracing the expensive silk sheets. The room was bigger than her entire apartment. Heated floors, soundproof windows, a bathroom that looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel. She could hear the distant hum of the city far below, but up here, it felt like another world. She didn't sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face in the wreckage of that car. She heard Damian's voice repeating the same words over and over. I've been watching over you for 10 years. By morning, the reality of her situation had fully settled in. She was a prisoner, a very well-treated, very expensive prisoner. Damian had left strict instructions with his men. No one was allowed to enter her room without permission. Her cello had been brought up and placed carefully in the corner. Fresh clothes in her size were already hanging in the walk-in closet. A private chef prepared every meal. Yet every door she tried was either locked or guarded. On the second day, Damian appeared more often. He didn't hover, but he was always there. She could hear his footsteps on the marble floors late at night, when the rest of the penthouse was quiet. Sometimes he would sit in the large living room while she played her cello, saying nothing for hours, just listening. When she stopped playing, he would speak in that low, controlled voice. You play like you're trying to forget something. Elena would grip her bow tighter. Maybe I am. By the third day, the tension outside had started bleeding into their world. Damian's men moved with more urgency. Phones rang at odd hours. She overheard fragments of conversations. Warehouses burned, bodies found in the river, rival soldiers being hunted across the city. The war had begun in full force, and it was all because of her. One evening, Elena was sitting by the massive floor-to-ceiling window, feeling the faint vibration of thunder far away, when Damian entered the room. They're getting desperate, he said without greeting. Vincent Romano's men have already hit 2 of my properties. They're looking for you. They think your father left you with the master ledger. Elena turned her head toward his voice. And did he? Damian was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally said. But they don't believe that. And they won't stop until they're sure. He walked closer and stopped just a few feet away from her. I can end this war quickly, he continued. But I need you to stay here, safe. I can't focus if I'm worried about you being out there. Elena let out a bitter laugh. You mean you can't focus if your leverage is gone? Damian didn't get angry. Instead, his voice dropped, becoming quieter and more dangerous. You think this is about leverage? He stepped even closer. I've spent 10 years making sure you never had to know about this world. 10 years keeping my promise to your father. And now that you're here, I'm not letting anything happen to you. Not because you're useful, because you're mine to protect. The word mine hung in the air between them. Elena felt her pulse quicken. There was something terrifyingly honest in his voice. Something that made her both want to run and stay at the same time. That night, she couldn't sleep again. She sat in the dark living room with her cello between her knees, playing soft, mournful notes that echoed through the massive penthouse. She didn't know Damian was standing in the hallway, listening to every note like it was the only thing keeping him sane. Outside, New York was burning. Sirens wailed in the distance. News reports talked about mysterious fires, shootings, and bodies discovered in abandoned warehouses. Damian's war against the Romano family had turned the city into a battlefield, and Elena was the reason it had started. On the morning of the 4th day, Damian entered the living room while she was still playing. He waited until she finished the piece before speaking. I have to leave for a few hours, he said. There's a situation at one of the airstrips. Romano's men are trying to intercept a shipment. I need to be there personally. Elena's hands tightened on her bow. You're leaving? Only for a few hours, he replied. This building is on complete lockdown. No one gets in or out. My best man, Marcus, will stay here with you. You'll be safe. Elena didn't answer. Damian walked closer and gently placed something on the table beside her. A small silver phone. If anything feels wrong, call me. I'll come back immediately. He paused, before adding, in a lower voice, Don't try to leave, Elena. Please. After he left, the penthouse felt even emptier than before. Elena sat in silence for a long time, listening to the quiet movements of Marcus, somewhere near the entrance. For the first time since she arrived, she wondered if staying here was truly the safest option, or if she had simply traded one danger for another. Damian stood near the entrance of the penthouse, adjusting the cuffs of his black shirt. His expression was cold and focused, the same look he wore before every major operation. Elena could hear the tension in his voice, even though he tried to hide it. Raphael stays here with you, Damian said. He's my most trusted man. No one gets inside this penthouse, not even my own people unless I personally clear it. Elena stood a few feet away, gripping her cane. She didn't like this. Something in her chest felt uneasy. How long will you be gone? She asked quietly. 4 hours. Maybe 5, Damian replied. This needs to be handled personally. Romano is getting bold. I can't afford to look weak right now. He stepped closer to her. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Stay inside. Don't do anything stupid. Raphael will keep you safe. Elena nodded, even though every instinct in her body was telling her something was wrong. After Damian left, the penthouse became eerily quiet. Elena tried to distract herself by playing her cello, but the music felt hollow in the massive empty space. She could hear Raphael moving around near the main entrance. He wasn't pacing like the other guards usually did. His movements were slower, heavier. Something about his presence made the air feel thick. After almost an hour of silence, Raphael finally spoke. You know, he said, his voice echoing slightly in the large living room. I always wondered what was so special about you. Elena stopped playing. She turned her head slightly toward his voice. Damian has burned half the city for you in just 3 days. Raphael continued. Men are dying on both sides. And for what? A blind girl who doesn't even know what her own father really was. Elena's grip tightened on her bow. I don't know what you're talking about, she said carefully. Raphael let out a low, humorless chuckle. She heard his footsteps getting closer. Come on, Elena. You're smarter than that. Your father was Thomas Voss, the man who hid every dirty dollar Damian ever made, and now everyone believes he left the master ledger with you before he died. Elena stayed completely still. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure Raphael could hear it. I don't have any ledger, she said. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't, Raphael replied. His voice was now much closer. But Vincent Romano is willing to pay me $3 million and give me my own territory if I deliver you to him, alive. He wants to ask you some questions himself. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. You're betraying Damian, she whispered. Raphael laughed softly. Damian is a fool. He's letting his obsession with you cloud his judgment. No woman is worth burning the entire city for, especially not some blind musician who doesn't even understand the game she's caught in. Elena heard the distinct sound of a gun being cocked. She didn't move. Raphael's voice dropped into something colder. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything you know about that ledger. Account numbers, locations, passwords, whatever your father left you. And if you cooperate, I might let you live long enough for Romano to decide what to do with you. Elena's breathing became shallow. She could feel him standing right in front of her now. The smell of his cheap cologne mixed with nervous sweat made her stomach turn. I don't know anything, she said, her voice steady despite the fear flooding her veins. Raphael grabbed her arm roughly and yanked her up from the chair. Her cello fell to the floor with a loud clatter. Don't lie to me, he snarled. Your father was paranoid. He wouldn't have left something that valuable without telling you. So start talking, or I'll break every one of those pretty fingers until you remember. Elena's mind raced. She could feel Raphael's grip tightening on her arm. She could hear his heavy breathing. For the first time since she arrived at this penthouse, she realized she was completely alone with a man who wanted to sell her to the highest bidder, and Damian was too far away to stop it. Raphael leaned in closer, his voice low and threatening. Last chance, Elena. Where is the ledger? Elena didn't answer. Instead, she did something Raphael never expected. She stopped pretending to be scared. Her entire body went still. The fear in her expression disappeared. What remained was something cold, calculated, and dangerous. Something her father had trained into her years ago, just in case this exact moment ever came. Raphael frowned, sensing the sudden change in her. What the hell are you? Before he could finish his sentence, Elena moved. Raphael's grip on Elena's arm was tight, but he made one fatal mistake. He assumed she was just a scared, blind girl. He didn't know that Thomas Voss had spent the last 3 years of his life training his daughter for exactly this kind of moment. He didn't know that Elena had spent years sharpening every sense she had left: hearing, smell, spatial awareness, and instinct. And he definitely didn't know that the fragile-looking girl standing in front of him had been waiting for someone to make a move like this. When Raphael yanked her forward, Elena didn't resist. Instead, she used his own force against him. In one fluid motion, she twisted her body and drove her elbow straight into his ribs with surprising strength. Raphael grunted in pain and loosened his grip for half a second. That was all she needed. Elena dropped low, swept her leg out, and knocked him off balance. Raphael stumbled backward, crashing into the glass coffee table. The sound of shattering glass filled the penthouse. What the fuck? He started. But Elena was already moving. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She simply stepped back and picked up her fallen cello bow from the floor. Her movements were calm, precise, like someone who had done this before. Raphael scrambled to his feet, rage and confusion twisting his face. He pulled out his gun and pointed it at her. Stop right there, or I'll put a bullet in your leg. Elena tilted her head slightly, listening to his breathing, his footsteps, the way his weight shifted on the marble floor. You won't shoot me, she said quietly. You need me alive for Romano. Dead, I'm worthless to you. Raphael's finger hovered over the trigger, but he hesitated. That hesitation cost him. Elena moved fast. She swung the heavy cello bow with full force and struck his wrist. The gun flew out of his hand and slid across the floor. Before he could react, she closed the distance between them, and drove her knee hard into his stomach. As he doubled over, she grabbed the back of his head and smashed it down onto her rising knee. Blood sprayed across the white marble. Raphael roared in pain and swung wildly. His fist connected with her shoulder, sending her stumbling back. But Elena didn't stay down. She rolled, grabbed her white carbon fiber cane from where it had fallen earlier, and pressed a hidden button on the handle. With a sharp metallic snick, a thin, razor-sharp titanium blade slid out from the tip of the cane. Raphael's eyes widened in shock. You're not supposed to." Elena didn't let him finish. She moved like someone who could see perfectly. Her spatial awareness, honed over years of blindness, was flawless. She ducked under his next swing, slashed upward with the cane blade, and cut deep across his forearm. Raphael screamed as blood poured from the wound. He lunged at her again, but Elena was ready. She sidestepped, used his momentum to throw him over her hip, and slammed him onto the broken glass. Before he could get up, she pressed the tip of the blade against his throat. Raphael froze. Elena stood over him, breathing steadily, her blank eyes staring down at where she knew his face was. Blood dripped from the blade onto his neck. "You made a mistake," she said coldly. "You thought I was the helpless blind girl everyone sees. You thought I was just some pawn Damian was protecting." She pressed the blade a little harder, drawing a thin line of blood. "I was never helpless. My father made sure of that. He trained me every single day after I lost my sight. He knew this world would come for me eventually, and he made sure I would be ready." Raphael stared up at her in pure terror. This wasn't the scared girl he had grabbed minutes ago. This was someone else entirely. Elena continued, her voice calm and terrifyingly steady. "I knew Damian was watching me for 10 years. I knew about the scholarships, the surgeries, the protection. I allowed it, because I knew that one day, Vincent Romano would try to finish what he started. And when that day came, I needed Damian's resources to destroy him." She leaned down slightly. "I memorized every account number, every shell company, every routing code. My father encoded the entire ledger into the sheet music of a concerto he wrote for me. I've carried it in my head since I was 15 years old." Raphael's face went pale. You have the ledger. I am the ledger," Elena replied. "And now you're going to tell me exactly where Vincent Romano is hiding tonight. Because if you don't," she pressed the blade deeper, "I'll start cutting pieces off you until you do." Raphael was shaking now. The man who had come to betray and sell her was now completely broken beneath her. Before Elena could ask another question, the heavy double doors of the penthouse burst open. Damian Vale stormed inside with 3 of his men, guns raised. His suit was stained with blood from the airstrip operation. The moment he saw the scene in front of him, Raphael on the floor, bleeding, with Elena standing over him holding a bladed cane to his throat, he stopped dead in his tracks. His men froze behind him. Damian's eyes moved from Raphael's terrified face to Elena's calm, blood-splattered expression. For the first time in years, the most feared Mafia boss in New York looked genuinely shocked. Elena didn't lower the blade. She simply turned her head slightly toward Damian's direction and spoke in a voice that was no longer soft or scared. "You're late," she said, "but at least now you know the truth." Damian stared at her for a long moment, something dark and dangerous flickering in his eyes. Not anger, something much more dangerous. Awe. The penthouse was completely silent except for Raphael's ragged breathing on the floor. Damian Vale stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the scene in front of him. His most trusted man was bleeding and broken on the marble floor, and standing above him, calm and terrifyingly composed, was the same blind girl he had spent 10 years protecting. Elena didn't move. She kept the blade of her cane pressed lightly against Raphael's throat, as if she had done this 100 times before. Damian's men looked between their boss and Elena, unsure of what to do. None of them had ever seen anything like this. Finally, Damian spoke. His voice was low and rough. "Take him downstairs, the soundproof room. I want to know everything he told Romano, and everything he planned to tell them." 2 of his men quickly moved forward, grabbed the bleeding Raphael, and dragged him out of the penthouse. The doors closed behind them with a heavy thud, leaving Damian and Elena alone. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Damian slowly walked closer, his eyes never leaving her. When he finally stopped just a few feet away, he looked at the blood on her hands, the blade still extended from her cane, and the cold, steady expression on her face. "You played me," he said quietly. There was no anger in his voice, only something deeper, something almost like respect, mixed with dark fascination. Elena finally retracted the blade with a soft click and lowered her cane. "I did what I had to do," she replied, "just like you did what you had to do for 10 years. Damian let out a slow breath and ran a hand through his hair. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "All this time, I thought I was protecting a fragile girl who lost everything. I thought I was keeping my promise to your father." He shook his head slightly. "But you were never fragile, were you?" "No," Elena said simply. "My father made sure of that. He knew that one day this world would come for me. He just didn't know it would be because of you." Damian stepped even closer. His voice dropped. "And now, what do you want, Elena?" She tilted her head slightly, as if considering the question. "I want the same thing you want," she answered. "I want Vincent Romano and everyone connected to him erased from this earth. I want the people who killed my father to suffer, and I want to stop hiding." She took one step toward him. "I've spent 10 years pretending to be weak, pretending I didn't know you were watching me, pretending I was just a blind musician trying to survive." Her voice grew stronger. "I'm done pretending." Damian stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a dark, dangerous smile spread across his face, the kind of smile that made his enemies terrified. He reached out and gently wiped a drop of blood from her cheek with his thumb. "Then, we do this together," he said. "No more hiding you, no more keeping you in a cage. From now on, you stand beside me." Elena didn't pull away from his touch. "Beside you?" she asked. Damian nodded. "Not behind me, not under my protection like some fragile thing." His voice was firm, almost possessive. "Beside me, as my equal, as my queen." Elena was quiet for a few seconds. Then, she gave a small, dangerous smile of her own. "I can live with that." Damian leaned down until his forehead almost touched hers. His next words came out like a vow. "Vincent Romano dies tonight. Every warehouse, every safe house, every soldier loyal to him, we burn it all to the ground, together." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of his presence. "Then let's finish what my father started," she whispered. Damian didn't answer with words. Instead, he closed the remaining distance and kissed her, hard, deep, and full of everything he had been holding back for 10 long years. Elena kissed him back with equal fire, her hand gripping the front of his blood-stained shirt. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing heavily. Damian rested his forehead against hers and spoke in a low, deadly voice. "New York is about to learn something new." He gently brushed his thumb across her bottom lip. "The most dangerous person in this city isn't me anymore." Elena smiled. "It's us." If you enjoyed this intense story of betrayal, hidden strength, and dark obsession, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful Mafia stories. Comment below, who was your favorite character, Elena or Damian? And should we make a part 2? Let me know. Thank you for watching.